Week 3 of the 2025 fantasy football season kicked off on Thursday Night Football with the Miami Dolphins going up against the Buffalo Bills in Buffalo. Whether that game ended up going great for your fantasy team or whether that game ended up going terrible, like the ending of the game for my Miami Dolphins, I'm going to help you guys fix that and win your week number 3 matchup. We're going to be going in depth through our top 40 wide receiver rankings and tiers in today's video, helping you guys set your lineup. So if you're new to the channel, make sure you do hit that subscribe button down below if you end up enjoying. So without further ado, let's get into today's video. We begin with the must-start wide receiver ones tier here with my wide receivers 1 through 11. CeeDee Lamb, Malik Nabers, Puka Nacua, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Jamar Chase, Nico Collins, Drizzy Drake London, Justin Jefferson, Zay Flowers, as well as Rome Odunze. CeeDee Lamb has finished as a top 14 wide receiver in back-to-back games and has had 11 plus targets in both showings. CeeDee Lamb was drafted in the early first round for a reason, and that is because he is a very reliable wide receiver game in and game out. He is the only one of the first 3 wide receivers drafted in a majority of leagues that still has his quarterback number 1, knock on wood, so up against the Bears in what could end up being one of the highest scoring games of the week. You got to feel real nicey about CeeDee Lamb. At number 2, we got Malik Nabers of the Giants going up against the Kansas City Chiefs on Sunday Night Football at home in MetLife. Wide receiver 29 in week number 1. Things weren't necessarily looking the best, but up against the Dallas Cowboys in Jerry's World last week, Malik Nabers went bananas. Wide receiver number 2, 9 receptions on 13 targets for 167 yards and 2 touchdowns. Malik Nabers is going to deal with some ups and downs this season, strictly basically due to the quarterback play, but he's seen 12 plus targets in back-to-back games. You just have to feel very safe with Malik Nabers in your lineup going forward. At number 3, we have Puka Nacua of the LA Rams going up against the Philadelphia Eagles in Philadelphia. Now, on paper, this is a very tough matchup for Puka Nacua, but the game is not played on paper. It is played on the field. Up against the Philadelphia Eagles last year, Puka Nacua played incredibly well in both games, so I feel very confident about him entering into this week. Both games so far this season inside the top 6, so why rank him any lower than this? At number 4, we got Amon-Ra St. Brown going up against the Baltimore Ravens in Baltimore. Now, I know Jared Goff has struggled against the Ravens in his career, but to be honest with you, I don't think you can panic off of that small of a sample size. Amon-Ra St. Brown was just the wide receiver number 1 in fantasy football last week. 9 receptions on 11 targets for 115 yards, and not 1, not 2, but 3 touchdowns on the Chicago Bears. The matchup here definitely isn't the best. The Ravens defense certainly is solid, but ultimately, again, a guy like Amon-Ra St. Brown, you're starting him every single week. JSN going up against the New Orleans Saints. Now, Jackson Smith-Njigba might not have the upside to really be the wide receiver 1 in a majority of matchups because of the fact that I think Sam Darnold kind of handicaps him that way, but JSN has seen 10 plus targets in back-to-back games, 18 plus PPR points in back-to-back games, that has been a top 13 wide receiver in both games. I think as the connection gels further with Sam Darnold and JSN, maybe then the upside will be there, but JSN has been a guy throughout his career that really hasn't been a guy that lives inside the end zone, hasn't been a guy that has scored a bunch of touchdowns, but again, even without the touchdowns, JSN is going to be uber consistent, so you kind of just have to, by default, rank him inside of the top 12. At number 6, we got Jamar Chase. Now, frankly, I want to panic on Jamar Chase. I want to bury him down my rankings because I don't want to feel like I'm ranking him too high because of his name, but frankly, how much lower can you go? It's like when you're playing the limbo, right? How low can you go? How low can you go on Jamar Chase? Because last week, once Jake Browning came into the game, that is where Jamar Chase started to dominate 50 Shades of Grey style. Now, in 2023, when this offense had Jake Browning in instead of Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase fell off the edge of the earth, and T. Higgins really started to see a rise in this offense. We'll see how things play out this year. The matchup up against the cold like Minnesota Vikings is very good, though. So again, while there's definitely reasons to worry, while I definitely don't feel as good about Jamar Chase going forward with Jake Browning compared to Joe Burrow, he's still, in my opinion, the best wide receiver in the NFL, and he was the wide receiver number 3 last week. Next up, we got Nico Collins going up against the Jacksonville Jaguars in Duval. Now, the problem with Nico Collins has nothing to do with his ability. He hasn't magically fallen off from 2024 to 2025. The sole problem here is one. There's two problems, so it's not a sole problem. There are two different problems here. Problem number uno would be the fact that the offensive line reeks to high heaven. The offensive line absolutely blows. And for two, CJ Stroud has really been on the struggle bus, but that's also because the offensive line hasn't been the best. Ultimately, though, the offensive line has been terrible throughout Nico Collins' career, and he has produced back in 2023 as well as in 2024, so I don't want to panic too much, especially in a matchup that I do like up against the Jaguars. At number 8, we got Drizzy Drake London going up against the Carolina Panthers this week in Carolina. Shout out to the baby. So this week, Drake London is coming off of a game where he was the wide receiver 75, a game up against the Vikings where all the Falcons needed to do to win that game was run the ball gently down the stream. A healthy dosage of Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier was all they needed to win the game, as well as Tony Romo's cousin kicking a bunch of field goals for the team after they got rid of Young Hoku. So, they don't have to throw the ball a ton. That's not going to benefit Drake London, because he's a receiver. Drake London was also coming off of an injury that typically leads to production drop-off in the first game back. So Drake London was in an offense that was spamming running, and he was banged up. So now, a week after that, I think he is bound to bounce back. The man had 15 targets in week number 1, so I'm not going to fucking overreact and panic after one down game, especially coming off the injury. At number 9, we got Justin Jefferson going up against the Cincinnati Bengals, a wet dream matchup for Justin Jefferson. Now, Nick, if this is such a great matchup, why do you have Justin Jefferson ranked at number 9 instead of top 5? Or the wide receiver 1? It's because Carson Wentz is the quarterback 1. I don't trust Carson Wentz at all. Not even remotely. And I also don't trust this offense to throw the ball a crazy amount of times, because I think they're just going to want to run the ball a ton with Jordan Mason until this game potentially gets out of hand, and then they'll have to throw. Now, I do think that Carson Wentz is going to feed Justin Jefferson when they do throw the ball, so I think he's going to be fine, but his upside is severely limited by the quarterback play, just like it was with J.J. McCarthy. So ultimately, you're still starting Justin Jefferson. Ultimately, you can't full-on panic on Justin Jefferson just yet, but shit doesn't seem so sweet right now over in Minnesota. At number 10, we got Zay Flowers going up against the Detroit Lions. Now, Zay Flowers has absolutely destroyed all of the things I threw against him in the summer. For one, I said, hey, Zay Flowers is a guy that doesn't really score a lot of touchdowns. Zay Flowers has struggled throughout his career to find the end zone, and that is because they are such a run-heavy team. You have Lamar Jackson, you have Derrick Henry. You don't need to be feeding Zay Flowers. But now, back-to-back games with 9 targets, then 11 targets. He has 1 touchdown on the season. He already finished as the wide receiver 1 in week number 1 in a high-scoring game, and this may be the highest-scoring game of the week. So Zay Flowers has been very consistent, has been very heavily targeted. So at this point in the season, through 2 games, he needs to be considered as a potential top 12 wide receiver, depending on matchup, and this is the kind of matchup where I feel great about him. At number 11, we got Rome Odunze of the Chicago Bears going up against the Dallas Cowboys. We just saw Malik Neighbors and Wan'Dale Robinson form an Eiffel Tower, shout out to Belly and Conrad, over the Dallas Cowboys defense. So what do you expect Rome Odunze to do up against this defense? He scored 3 touchdowns through the first 2 games of the season. I understand that Ben Johnson this, Ben Johnson that, Caleb Williams this, Caleb Williams that. I get this is not a finished product yet, but I told you guys entering into the summer, Rome was not built in a day. Sure, it didn't work in his rookie year, but in his second year, the sophomore season, things are working amazingly here. So up against the Cowboys defense that might be dog shit, I think Rome Odunze is going to show out and ball out. Now, moving on into the second tier here. We just had the must-start wide receiver 1s. Now we got the high-end wide receiver 2s headlined by Brian Thomas Jr., BTJ of the Jaguars, going up against the Houston Texans, currently questionable, dealing with the wrist injury. He is expected to go, though. Nick, What is wrong with Brian Thomas Jr.? His wrist, for one, and Trevor Lawrence is an absolute disgrace. I thought entering into this season, look, I get Trevor Lawrence hasn't been great throughout his NFL career. I fully understand that. But if bdge was balling with Mac Jones without Liam Cohen, I thought that as long as Trevor Lawrence was halfway competent, bdge was going to eat with Liam Cohen in this Jacksonville Jaguars Duval offense. And guess what? I've been smacked once. I have been smacked again. Fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, can't get fooled again. Shout out to George Bush. I don't know if I'm going to get fooled 3 times, but I can't quit it. I can't not rank bdge this high. 7 targets and 12 targets. But he's had 5 fucking receptions total. He found the end zone in week 1. Not so lucky in week number 2. I think things will eventually break his way. But at this point, the panic meter is starting to move at a rapid rate. At number 13, we got Davante Adams of the Rams going up against the Eagles. Now, a lot of people were clowning on me in the summer. Nick, how can you draft Davante Adams as your fantasy wide receiver 1 potentially when he's the number 2 receiver on the LA Rams? Haven't you heard of Puka Nacua? As someone that was a Puka Nacua stand in his rookie year, of course I heard about Puka Nacua, and he and Davante Adams can coexist. They can both eat off the same plate because they don't really throw the ball to anyone else besides Davante Adams and Puka Nacua. Davante Adams kicks the teeth in of the Tennessee Titans last week. 6 receptions, 13 targets, 106 yards, and a touchdown. Frankly, if he played a little bit better, he could have scored multiple touchdowns in that game. I know this is a rough matchup on paper, but the Rams and the Eagles always play things close with Sean McVay and Matthew Stafford. This should be a higher scoring game, even if the defensive matchup doesn't tell us that. And Davante Adams could score not just 1, but multiple touchdowns in this spot, so he deserves to be ranked this high. The last guy in this tier is going to be the Lad McConkey of the LA Superchargers, going up against the Denver Broncos this week at home. Patrick Surtain in limbo, potentially. And if he plays or not, he's a little bit banged up. Though Lad should not have to go against him. You would think that would either be Patrick Surtain versus Quentin Johnston or Patrick Surtain versus Keenan Allen. I know, Lad McConkey has been a disaster through the first 2 games. I guess not as much of a disaster as bdge because he's outscored bdge, but based on my personal expectations and based on what we saw down the stretch of last season, it is disappointing, especially when we consider the fact that the LA Chargers went from what I expected to be one of the most run-heavy offenses in the NFL with Omarion Hampton and Najee Harris, and they have shapeshifted into one of the most pass-heavy offenses in the NFL, and still, Lad McConkey's watching in the corner like a cuck, shout out to Adam22, while you end up seeing Quentin Johnston just having it fun in the end zone. Wow, look at Quentin Johnston do the end zone dance, right? And then Keenan Allen, he's having fun too, that old fuck. He's playing great too. Yet Lad McConkey just sitting in the corner, watching it in action. He's in the cuck chair in the hotel room. I think things will get better. I'm not panicking at all, though, on Lad McConkey. We can make all these jokes. It's a fun time. But it really won't be that funny if he shits the bed again this week. Moving now on into the 3rd tier here, the low-end wide receiver 2s, with Courtland Sutton, Mbeke Egbuka, Garrett Wilson, Mike Evans, Tedero McMillan, Debo Samuel, Marvin Harrison Jr., and DK Metcalf. In this tier also was Tyreek Hill, but Tyreek Hill already played, so we don't talk about players that already played. That's always a question I get, like, Nick, why are the Dolphins guys not in the rankings, or the Bills guys? Didn't you rank them inside the top 40 or 50? Yeah, but they already played, so you can't just retroactively throw them into your lineup. So Courtland Sutton going up against the LA Chargers. Now, Courtland Sutton in week 1, I'm victory lap, and I'm like, hooray, yip, yip, hooray, hip, hip, hooray, I guess is the correct saying. I'm so happy. I'm such a genius. I said to draft Courtland Sutton. I said he was going to get force-fed down the wazoo week in and week out. Week 1, he does that. Then week 2, he is just on a missing poster. He scores 2 fucking fantasy points, and Troy Franklin, the turtle, is going nuclear. This week, I expect a bounce-back game out of Courtland Sutton. A lot of people are panic dropping him down the rankings. I love Courtland Sutton. I still think he's the number 1 receiver on an offense with Sean Payton. That's going to be great. Now, if he shits the bed again, it's time to panic. But after one down game, after one great game in week 1, I just don't tend to overreact, especially when I get the Chargers matchup isn't the most ideal, but they're going to be throwing the ball a lot to Courtland Sutton. At number 16, we got Emeka Egbuka Uga Buga Buka of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers going up against the New York Jumbo Jets. Questionable return to practice on Friday with a hip and groin injury. I'm sure that Tua Tagovailoa has a hip and groin injury from fucking me directly in the ass last night. Allegedly, not allegedly, because I'm not talking about anything seriously happening, but I got absolutely fucked over by the fact that Tua Tagovailoa turns into Ray Charles the second that there's 4 minutes left in the game. And let me tell you something as well. Let me tell you something. Shout out to Moicano from the UFC. What the fuck, Zach Seiler? We pay you $8 gazillion and you hit the punter after that happened up against the Patriots too? This is just disgusting. I don't know what is wrong with the Dolphins. This isn't a Dolphins video. They're 0-3. They suck dick like their name was Lily Phillips. I can't stand it. I still watch every game. Still the asshole wearing a Dolphins shirt. Got the Dolphins flag behind me. I got a Dolphins hat on. It's like, you ever seen where one of your friends, like his girlfriend cheats on him and then he goes back with that girl? That's how it is with the Dolphins. They've been face fucking me for how old am I now? I'm an unk at this point, but I've really cared about football since I was in like middle school. So for a very, very long time, I've just been getting screwed over by the Dolphins. It's illegal. I was a minor at that point and they kept on fucking me. Terrible. And again, these are just jokes. But in reality, it's not a joke. It really is a joke. It ain't sweet. It ain't sweet about what's going on in Miami. And it's really disappointing. But again, people probably skip this. They're like, Nick, you got to talk about the fucking games. Emeka Egbuka, if he plays, you play him. It's really just that simple. 3 touchdowns through 3 games. His rookie season is looking phenomenal. 6 targets week 1, 7 targets in week 2. Again, 2 touchdowns week 1, 1 touchdown in week 2. You feel uber safe about him. I get the Jets do have a good defense, but they haven't played that way. So you got to keep rocking with Emeka Egbuka. At number 17, we got the wide receiver on the other side, Garrett Wilson, going up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But before we talk about Garrett Wilson some more, as well as the rest of the wide receivers in today's video, I would like to give you guys a quick word from our friends, our partner over at Underdog. If you're brand new to Underdog and sign up using promo code Notorious or by clicking on the link in the video description, you will get a free pick plus a first-time deposit offer of up to $1,000 in bonus funds, as well as if you play $5, you in the pick'em, you receive $50 in bonus funds. If you don't know how the pick'em works, it's incredibly simple. Pick at least 2 players. They're higher or they're lower. If those picks hit, you get paid. If you do multiple other picks, then obviously the other picks have to hit, but the payout will be higher. They have multiple offers on Underdog all of the time that you guys can take advantage of. So make sure you guys do check that out. Promo code Notorious or by clicking on the link in the video description. Now, Garrett Wilson comes out the gate of the season on fire, NBA Jam style, very much like Courtland Sutton, wide receiver 7 in week 1, and then smash the brakes. Week 2 up against the Buffalo Bills. They get destroyed by the Bills. He scores 9 fantasy points as wide receiver 54. Tyrod Taylor will be the starting quarterback for the team. I don't think ultimately Tyrod Taylor is like the nail in the coffin for Garrett Wilson, but it's also not the best. Like, you would prefer that Ohio State connection between Garrett Wilson and Justin Fields. At the end of the day, though, I think he'll be fine enough here. He's just the only fucking target to throw the ball to, so he'll be all right. At number 18, we got Mike Evans. Now, Mike Evans was a guy that I was fading throughout the summer, and there were so many people in the comment section telling me that, Nick, it's ridiculous that you're not going to draft Mike Evans. Nick, it is ridiculous that a guy that has been this consistent for so long, you're not drafting him. Nick, how can this be? And what I said was incredibly simple. I have a bunch of wide receivers on the roster. A guy like Mike Evans kind of shrivels up. We saw it last year. When it was Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, Mike Evans wasn't doing diddly squat, but then Chris Godwin gets hurt, and then Magic Mike goes off, right? And I like Mike Evans. I've been a fan of him since Texas A&M with Johnny Football. But ultimately, through the first 2 weeks of the season, I look right. Now, Mike Evans hasn't been dreadful. He scored 10 and 11 points. He's got 8 and 11 targets. So eventually his day is going to come. But him being this ultra safe top 24 wide receiver every single week just really doesn't seem in the cards this season, especially if Chris Godwin returns, which seems like it's coming up quickly. At number 19, we got Tedero McMillan, T-Mac going up against the Atlanta Falcons. T-Mac has improved from his first game to his second game. I think his third game is going to look even better. Last week, 6 receptions on 10 targets for 100 yards. If Bryce Young could just remotely lock in Tedero McMillan could be a top 12 wide receiver rest of season, it just heavily hinges on, can Bryce Young figure it out? all the other target competition is really not that good. Hunter Renfrow had a great game. Sure, I like Hunter Renfrow, but Xavier, somebody touching my Leggett, absolutely sucks. There's Oker's injured. Davion Sanders pretty good. So is Chuba Hubbard, but like Tet's the guy. T-Mac's the guy. Love the matchup up against the Falcons. Again, if Bryce Young can just figure it out, you're going to be feeling great about this selection. Debo up next, going up against the Las Vegas Raiders at home in Washington. Now, Debo didn't practice on Thursday for a personal matter. Not really worried about that. So, again, it was personal. It is what it is. Not even going to look too much into that. If he obviously, just for some reason, they say he's not going to play on Sunday, it's a 1 p.m. game. We'll know at like 12 o'clock. So don't worry too much about that. I didn't really track their practice on Friday outside the fact that Jaden Daniels didn't practice, which probably means that Marcus Mariota will be under center. Maybe the team believes in Jaden Stormy Daniels so much that he plays even if he hasn't practiced, which is possible. I think it will be Mariota. Now, I did some sleuthing into Mariota in 2024 when he played for the Commanders. He was 18 of 23 for 205 yards and 2 tugs up against the Panthers. Up against the Cowboys in January, 15 of 18 for 161 yards and 2 touchdowns. So, is he amazing? No, but he's serviceable. He is serviceable, certainly. The Raiders defense is a little bit underrated. Debo has scored a touchdown in back-to-back games, 8+ targets in back-to-back games, 7 receptions in back-to-back games. So, again, even with the quarterback switcheroo, you still got to feel better about Debo than you would with Terry McLaurin. At number 21, can you do something for me? We got Maserati, Marvin Harrison Jr. going up against the 49ers in San Francisco. Through the first 2 games of the season, it is basically a recapturing of what happened last season. Week 1, Marvin Harrison, belt to ass. I know last year in week 1 it wasn't that good, but again, just a 2-game sample size. You go back to last season, it looks very similar. Wide receiver 13, and the wide receiver 82. Now, last week, there are a lot of excuses that I can make for why did Marvin Harrison Jr. not succeed. For one, they were beating the ever-living shit out of the Carolina Panthers, so they didn't really have to throw the ball a ton. That's really it. That's really the biggest excuse there is. 5 targets, 6 targets in week 1. The targets are very scary, but again, Marvin Harrison Jr. is so good that he will have good games even with getting 6 targets, and hopefully the team just realizes they should give him the ball more, but they should have realized that after last season. Still haven't quite clocked that. At number 22, we got DK Metcalf going up against the Patriots in Foxborough. Back-to-back games with 11+ fantasy points, wide receiver 28, wide receiver 40. Not the revenge game that I was hoping for last week up against the Seahawks. Aaron Rodgers definitely looked very limp dick from week 1 compared to week number 2. Week 1, amazing up against the Jets. He hammers them. And in week number 2, not so much up against the Seahawks. Christian Gonzalez might play. He might not play. DK Metcalf should be able to eventually have that big game, because he's a really good player still. Still really fast. Was big touchdown upside. He scored a touchdown last week. So I just think there's kind of brighter days ahead for Metcalf. Again, we're just 2 weeks into the season. Once we get to, they play next week against the Vikings, right? Say he doesn't do good this week. And next week, it's like, okay, you have to do it. Week 5's the bye. After the bye, then we start to panic. Then we have to start really throwing him down the rankings. Again, it's too early to go full-on panic mode. Moving now on into the 4th tier here, the high-end wide receiver 3s. We begin with A.J. Brown. Now, I told people throughout the summer, again, I'm going to be right about some things, wrong about some things. I was incredibly right about A.J. Brown. I said, Philadelphia Eagles run the football way too much for A.J. Brown to be consistent, and they took it to a whole nother level this year. Jalen Hurts threw for 101 yards, wizard of 101 yards in week number 2 up against the Chiefs. 5 receptions on 8 targets, 27 yards. As the wide receiver, 6'7". Wide receiver, 67. Wide receiver, 67 up against the Chiefs. 2 fantasy points up against Cowboys in week. Look, A.J. Brown's played against the Rams before. He's played great against them. But do I trust him? Fuck no, baby. Next up, we got Jacoby Myers of the Las Vegas Raiders. We're not going to scream multiple times in today. You already blew your ears out one time. Just like the Dolphins blew my back out last night. Going up against the Commanders in Washington. Wide receiver 15 week 1. Wide receiver 33 in week 2. Jacoby Myers is all reliable. We're going to say the same shit every single week. If I sound like a broken record, skip ahead 20 seconds because we're not going to talk about it for too much. Jakobi Meyers will probably never win you your week, probably never lose you your week. He's a very safe bet every single week. Could have a 30-plus point game if the Raiders lock in, but they probably won't. They'll just kind of be, it is what it is. But you still feel very good about Jakobi every week because he gets so many targets and he has good hands. So Jakobi Meyers, very reliable every single week. At number 26, we got Terry McLaurin going up against the Raiders. Eventually, one of these games, everything's going to all gel together and Terry McLaurin's going to go back to doing what he did last year. For the first 2 games, the connection hasn't been the best with Jaden Daniels. Probably no Jaden Daniels this week. Again, I can't rank him really high, but you also can't bury him down because that game's eventually coming. Next up, we got GP George Pickens going up against the Chicago Bears. Week 1, no bueno. Week 2, very nice. I like up against the Giants. 5 receptions on 9 targets for 68 yards and a tug. Wide receiver 15, 18 fantasy points. Going up against the Bears might be a wet dream matchup here for Pickens. Again, could be the highest scoring game of the week. This year is probably going to be a lot like what the first 2 games of the season were. You're going to get the really high highs and the really low lows. My hope, though, is that with Dallas, with Dak Prescott, we are able to see a much more consistent version of George Pickens and not the version of George Pickens that would show up, have those big games, and then disappear off the face of the earth like he did over in Pittsburgh. Next up, we move to T. Higgins going up against the cold-like Minnesota Vikings in Minnesota. Now, I love T. Higgins. I'm a T. Higgins truther. T. Higgins balled out with Jake Browning in 2023. Let's see it happen before we rank him way higher. It just fucking sucks that Joe Burrow got hurt. Really is just my biggest takeaway because if Joe Burrow was healthy up against the Vikings, T. Higgins would be, in the 3rd tier, right? The high-end wide receiver 2s. But instead, he's kind of just buried down here because of the quarterback play. Next up, we got Keenan Allen going up against the Denver Broncos. He might get the Patrick Surtain, the PS2 experience. Back-to-back weeks inside the top 18. I talked about Keenan Allen in the summer. I said you want to draft him, you want to take that dart throw because the guy, no consistency last year. 0 consistency to his play. He was either balls to the wall, 18-plus point performer, or scoring not negative points, but he scored below 10 points. Very bad. Him and Justin Herbert have that connection. They throw the ball a ton. Terrible matchup, though. So, temper your expectations a little bit. At number 30, we got Jameson Williams. Now, if Jameson Williams could just get 6 targets a game, 7 targets a game, would feel great about him. But he's gotten 4 targets and 5 targets. He's had a big game. He's had a bad game. So there's really no reliability here with Jameson Williams. Kind of just rolling the dice on, hey, can he take one of these 4 to 5 targets to the crib? Does? You're happy, right? You're hitting the fucking gritty in front of your television. His signature touchdown dance that he hit up against the Commanders where he started humping the ground. Talking about in it, right? So I like Jameson Williams. I think he's a talented player, but ultimately his level of consistency is too low to rank him higher. Next up, we move into the 5th tier here, the mid-range wide receiver 3s with Slick Ricky Pearsall and Jawan Jennings. These guys you could easily rank in the tier above, and I could end up moving that because the matchup is so good up against the Cardinals. But at the same time, like last week, I thought Mac Jones was going to force feed Ricky Pearsall like he force fed BTJ, but instead the ball was going to Jawan Jennings. And obviously Christian McCaffrey takes away a big target share as well. Once Brock Purdy's back, Ricky's going to keep rising up the rankings. Again, this is a great matchup for him. He performed very well with Brock. Not so hot last week. But again, you're probably not going to feel shafted by him. Like, in my opinion, when we look at the tier above here, the 4th tier that we just discussed, like, Jakobi Meyers probably not going to screw you over. But, like, George Pickens could easily screw you over. T. Higgins, Keenan, Jameson, Ricky feels a little bit safer than those guys, but I think the upside might be capped by the quarterback play. And the other guy in this tier is Jawan Jennings going up against the Arizona Cardinals. Now, this guy, we said in the wide receiver start sit video, is just permanently hurt. I don't know what's going on. He was dealing with a bunch of injuries, and then he's having the contract situation, and he's injured, and then he comes back, and he plays, and then he's hurt. And it's like, dude, this guy just simply can't catch a break, but he got paid. So shout out to Jawan Jennings for that. Seems like the favorite target of Mac Jones last week, scored that touchdown up against the Saints as the wide receiver 11. So if he plays, he feels fair in this range. Next tier here is the 6th tier, which we will describe as the low-end wide receiver 3s. And this is where things start to really kind of take a turn. Now, I don't mean that DJ Moore, Devontae Smith, Chris Olave, Hollywood Brown, Michael Pittman, Travis Hunter are like some dog shit players. But my confidence level going from the mid-range wide receiver threes to the low-end wide receiver threes drastically changes. My confidence level is significantly lower once you get deeper than that. Now, DJ Moore, seemingly the wide receiver one going into the season. We talked about how we liked Rome. The Vegas lines really like DJ Moore. Shout out to Nick Ercolano. Let's see how things go here. I still think it's Rome's wide receiver room. He's the number one. DJ Moore has yet to really flourish, yet to really fuck us over. 9 points, 10 fantasy points. Brighter days might be ahead, especially when Johnson gets better here. The scheme works more. Caleb Williams figures things out more. Yeah, I think things are going to get better. But right now, like after 2 weeks, is wide receiver 46 or 49. Like you can't really be much higher than this. Devontae Smith going up against the Rams, another guy that I faded throughout the summer. Devontae Smith right now, like again, one of these days, him or AJ Brown are going to put up belt to ass numbers, have that big game. Devontae Smith had 2 games last year where he was getting a crazy amount of targets, and in those games, AJ Brown wasn't there. Again, this is a team that can win the game throwing for 101 yards. So any given game, both these guys could be in the shitter. Next up, we got Chris Olave. Now, playing Chris Olave always deep down just would worry me in general. Not because I think Chris Olave is a bad player, but for one, the guy just continues to get hurt. He was in the blue tent twice in week 1. I don't want him to get hurt. I don't root for anyone to get hurt, so I hope no one takes it that way. But Chris Olave, the guy kind of lives in the injury tent, sadly, and his quarterback is Spencer fucking Rattler, who we don't trust at all. Discount Patrick Mahomes. Olave's been a top 36 wide receiver, though, in back-to-back weeks, 10-plus targets in both games. So while it might not feel the best, it definitely can be playing him. Next up, we got Marquise Hollywood Brown. He went from Hollywood Brown to fucking Bollywood Brown in week number 2. In week 1, Hollywood gets 10 receptions, 16 targets, 99 yards. Last week, 5 of 5 for 30. Wide receiver 9 week 1, wide receiver 63 in week 2. Giants matchup is great. Xavier Worthy should play, though he's playing through serious injury, so don't think he'll be super involved. Hollywood's just pretty risky, but if the Giants are able to play into this game, and it could be high scoring, which I don't think it will, honestly, I think the Giants are just going to get face fucked by the Chiefs in this game. You don't feel terrible playing Hollywood Brown, but you also just don't feel the best at this point. Next up, we got Michael Pittman Jr. going up against the Titans in Tennessee. I do feel like a bounce-back game is coming. Really hot, red hot week 1. Not so hot week number 2 up against the Broncos, but that was really a tough matchup for Pittman Jr., but I kind of want to just pump the brakes a little bit and not push him up too high, strictly just because of the fact that I think the emergence of Josh Downs is probably nearing, so I don't really want to just, boost him up too hard, but he does feel good in this range. Final guy here is Travis Hunter, going up against the Houston Texans at home in Jacksonville. Travis Hunter has not been great, but he's seen 6+ targets in back-to-back games. I think he's going to have a big game eventually, but again, until Trevor Lawrence truly figures it out, like, how can you rank him any higher than this? Moving down to the final tier, the wide receiver 4, so if you guys have enjoyed thus far, uppercut that subscribe button like it owes you some money. Wandale, Mr. 305, going up against the Chiefs at home in MetLife. Wide receiver 5 last week, 33 the week before. Look, I've been a Wandale hater for as long as I've been alive, since birth, okay? Not really. But ever since he got into the NFL, Wandale's kind of just been, right? He's been, you get your 10 fantasy points to 12 fantasy points, and you're happy about it. That's what he does in week 1. Week 2, though, he goes ballistic, gets that touchdown, wide receiver 5. I have now earned a lot more respect for Wandale, but this does feel like a come back down to earth party here where he scores 10-ish points. Quentin Johnston just keeps doing it. He's going up against the Broncos. Might be a tough spot for him. Back-to-back games, though, as a top 24 wide receiver, so have to give him his flowers. Shout out to Zay, give him his credit, and rank him this high, even though I'm scared shitless up against the Broncos. Next up is Stephon Diggs, the man that is alleged to have 3 children within the last year. He has a child now with Cardi B, allegedly. Cardi B, and I'm back, bitches. I ain't gonna be acting different. Shout out to Cardi B. Wide receiver 31 in week 1, wide receiver 70 in week 2 up against the Dolphins. The snaps have just not been there for Stefon Diggs, so I can't rank him any higher than this. But once the snaps start coming, once he will be more involved in the offense, I think he has league winner written all over him. Final guy, Calvin Ridley, just really not been good at all. I love Calvin Ridley, but it really isn't all his fault. It's kind of on Cam Ward taking his rookie lumps. Get the reps in. I think once Ward figures it out, Calvin Ridley will get better. So again, that's why I can't rank him any higher, even though I still do really like him for the rest of the season. So thank you guys all so much for watching. If you ended up enjoying, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button down below. Like it owes some money. Leave a like on today's video to help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter or X, please do so at NotoriousFantasy. Check out one of the videos on the screen if you haven't seen it already. Love you long time. As always, good boy!